Daniel Brooks texted me on a quiet Tuesday night while rain slid slowly down the windows of my apartment. The kind of soft rain that makes the whole city sound distant, like everything outside your walls has been muted. His message was short. I really like you, but I think we should just stay friends. I stared at the screen for a long time, long enough that the light from my phone started to make my eyes ache. I read the sentence again, then again, as if staring long enough might soften its meaning. But it didn't. Clean, polite, final. Strangely, my heart didn't shatter the way people expect it to in moments like that. No dramatic wave of pain, no tears falling onto the screen, no surge of anger. What I felt instead was emptiness. A quiet, hollow feeling spreading through my chest, like a room that had just been cleared of furniture. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, and until that moment, I had convinced myself that Daniel and I were slowly building something real together. Turns out I was the only one reading that version of the story. I didn't reply right away. I sat on my couch with my phone still in my hand, listening to the rain tapping against the glass. I tried to identify a single clear emotion: hurt, embarrassment, anger, relief. But everything inside me felt muted. Eventually, I nodded to myself, a small, tired nod, the kind you give when something you've been avoiding finally becomes impossible to ignore. All right, I get it. I opened the chat and typed one sentence. Thank you for being honest. I hit send. Then I placed my phone on the coffee table and leaned back against the couch, exhaling slowly like I had been holding my breath for months without realizing it. That was the moment I made a quiet promise to myself. If Daniel wanted us to be friends, then I would treat him exactly like one. Nothing more, nothing less. At the time, I didn't realize how much that small decision would change everything between us. Daniel wasn't some random guy I met online or bumped into once at a bar. We had known each other for almost a year. We met through a group of mutual friends, movie nights, weekend hangouts, late dinners, where conversations drifted from work complaints to ridiculous childhood stories. At first, Daniel was just another person in the group, but he had a presence that made people lean toward him without noticing. He was funny in an effortless way, the kind of humor that slipped naturally into conversation instead of trying to dominate it. When he laughed, his eyes narrowed slightly, like he genuinely found the moment amusing instead of performing for the room. And when he listened to someone speak, he really listened. That's a dangerous quality, because when someone looks at you like you're the only person in the room, it becomes easy to believe you matter more to them than you actually do. My feelings for Daniel didn't arrive all at once. They built slowly, like water seeping into the foundation of a house. One day nothing feels different. Then suddenly the floor beneath your feet has shifted. I started noticing small details about him. The way he scrunched his nose when something made him laugh too hard. The way he leaned back in his chair when thinking, one hand running through his hair. The way he remembered tiny things people mentioned in passing. Once during a group coffee run, I casually said I didn't like overly bitter coffee. 2 weeks later, when we met again, Daniel handed me a latte and said casually, "I remember you said you don't like strong coffee." It was such a small thing, but small things echo loudly when you're beginning to care about someone. Over the next 6 months, I did what people often do when they're falling for someone but aren't ready to say it out loud. I showed it instead. When Daniel mentioned he loved sushi from a small restaurant across the city, I made a reservation for us one weekend under the excuse of trying a new place. When his earbuds broke a few days before his birthday, I replaced them with the same model he had once pointed out in a store. When he had a rough day at work, I was the person answering the phone close to midnight, listening to him vent about office politics and impossible deadlines. Sometimes we drove around the city after everyone else had gone home, music playing softly while streetlights blurred across the windshield. I wasn't trying to impress him with money or grand gestures. I just wanted him to know he mattered to me. And the confusing part was that Daniel never acted cold toward me. He smiled when I showed up. He invited me to gatherings. During a movie night once, he leaned his head on my shoulder for a few minutes while everyone else laughed at something happening on screen. Another night, after I helped him polish a presentation for work, he texted me afterward, "You're honestly my favorite person." I remember staring at that message for a long time, trying not to smile too obviously, even though no one else was in the room. Favorite person. Some phrases are dangerously ambiguous. They're not a confession, not a promise, but they're warm enough to let your imagination start constructing an entire future around them. I built that future quietly. I believe we were moving towards something real. I believe Daniel simply needed time. I believe patience and kindness would eventually lead somewhere clear. Looking back now, the part that stings the most isn't that Daniel told me we should just be friends. It's realizing I had been reading a completely different script than he was. I was always the one texting first, always planning hangouts, always remembering birthdays, stressful work days, random details about his life. I made him a priority. He made me an option. To be fair, Daniel never explicitly asked for all the things I gave him, but he never stopped me either. And that's the part that hurts the most. Someone doesn't have to promise you love to accept everything you offer. Later that night, after sending my reply, I walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of water. I leaned against the counter and looked around my quiet apartment. Nothing had physically changed. The rain still fell outside. The refrigerator hummed softly. My phone lay silent on the table. But something inside me had shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. The next morning, I woke up and instinctively reached for my phone. Normally, I would send Daniel a dumb message like, "Good morning, coffee addict," or a meme to start the day. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I locked the phone and set it back down. I got up, made breakfast, opened the curtains, and let the morning light fill the kitchen. And I let the silence stay exactly where it was. At first, it felt strange, like breaking a habit you didn't realize had become automatic. But underneath that quiet was something unexpected. Relief, like stepping off a treadmill you'd been running on for far too long. That's when I understood something important. I wasn't going to play the same role anymore. From now on, Daniel Brooks would simply be another friend. At least that's what I believed at the time. What I didn't realize was that the moment I stepped out of his orbit, Daniel would finally start noticing the space I left behind. The shift didn't happen with a dramatic speech or a carefully planned transformation. It started quietly. 3 days after Daniel's message, he texted me around noon. "Hey, want to grab coffee later?" Before, I would have rearranged my entire afternoon without hesitation. This time I looked at the message and kept working. I was finishing a marketing report when the notification appeared. Normally, it would have pulled my attention away instantly. Instead, I let it sit there until I finished the paragraph I was writing. 20 minutes later, I replied, "Can't today, maybe another time." Polite, friendly, neutral. No emojis, no follow-up question. Just the kind of answer you'd send a casual friend. When I set my phone down again, I felt a strange flicker of discomfort, like I had broken an invisible rule. But underneath that discomfort was something else. Lightness. Later that evening, he replied, "Okay, busy week?" I read the message while brushing my teeth. "Yeah, just a lot going on." That was it. For the first time since I met Daniel, I wasn't trying to keep the conversation alive. 3 days passed like that. Then the first real sign appeared. It was almost midnight when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. "Daniel, you've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" I stared at the screen in the dark before replying. "Yeah, all good. Just been busy." 30 seconds later, the phone buzzed again. "You sure?" A week earlier, I would have typed a long, reassuring explanation. Instead, I wrote, "Yeah, don't worry." Then I went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up to 2 missed calls from him. One from just after midnight. Another around 8 in the morning. A few minutes later, a message appeared. "Oops, pocket dial, I think." I smiled slightly at that, not because I believed it, but because I understood exactly what was happening. Daniel wasn't used to the silence. He wasn't used to me not orbiting him anymore. A few days later, we saw each other at a group hangout. Our friend Matt was celebrating a promotion at a crowded bar filled with overlapping conversations and clinking glasses. When I arrived, Daniel was already there. Before, I would have gravitated toward him. That night, I didn't. I greeted everyone equally, hugged Matt, ordered a drink, and took a seat across the table instead of next to Daniel. When someone told a joke, I laughed. When Daniel spoke, I listened politely, but I didn't give him extra attention. No lingering eye contact. No private conversations. Just balance. Apparently, balance felt like rejection. About an hour into the night, Daniel leaned toward me. "So, you've been hard to reach lately." His tone was casual, but his eyes were studying my face. I shrugged lightly. "Just busy with work." Later that evening, he dropped something into the group conversation. "I met someone from work this week. New girl in the department." A few people reacted with interest. "Oh yeah?" Matt asked. Daniel nodded. "She's cool. Pretty funny, actually." Then he glanced briefly at me. But honestly, not as thoughtful as Emily. I sipped my drink and smiled politely. "Hope it works out. Nothing more." That seemed to confuse him. A few days later, he tried again over text. "Went out to dinner with that coworker tonight. She ordered before even asking what I wanted." I read the message while standing in line for coffee. Before, I might have teased him about it or used the moment to continue the conversation. Instead, I replied, "Haha, sounds like you had fun though." No follow-up, no curiosity, just a friendly reaction. Daniel didn't respond for a while after that. Over the next week, I noticed something else happening. His social media posts started changing. Sad quotes, black and white photos, little captions about missing good times. Before, those posts would have pulled me back in. Now I simply reacted with a small heart and kept scrolling. Apparently that unsettled him, because one night my phone buzzed with another message. "You've really changed, Emily." I stared at the screen for a moment before replying. "Guess we both have." 3 dots appeared as he started typing, then disappeared. No message came. The next time we met with friends, Daniel arrived late. And he arrived differently. Sharper clothes, fresh haircut, the same cologne I once told him smelled good on him. He walked into the room with exaggerated energy, greeting everyone loudly. When he reached me, he lightly touched my arm. "Hey, stranger." I smiled politely. "Hey." Then I turned back to the conversation I had been having with someone else. I could feel his eyes linger for a second longer than necessary. That was when something clicked. Daniel wasn't trying to reconnect. He was trying to reclaim something, the attention he had lost. And for the first time since all of this started, I saw him clearly. Not the charming version I had built in my head, but the real person standing in front of me. Someone who liked the comfort of knowing I was always there. Someone who enjoyed the validation and loyalty I offered, but not the commitment that came with it. And that realization hurt more than the rejection ever did. Later that night, after Daniel left, Matt nudged me with a grin. "Hey," he said quietly. "Daniel seems kind of thrown off lately." I laughed softly. "What did you do to him?" I shrugged. "Nothing." And that was the honest answer. Because the truth was much simpler. I hadn't done anything at all. I had just stopped participating. Over the next few weeks, my life started shifting in ways I hadn't expected. Not dramatically. Not overnight. Just quietly. When you stop pouring energy into someone who never held it carefully, you suddenly realize how much time you actually have. I started going back to the gym again, something I had neglected for months because my evenings were usually filled with group hangouts or spontaneous late-night drives with Daniel. The first week was brutal. My muscles protested every movement, and halfway through the treadmill, I questioned every life decision that had led me there. But the exhaustion felt good, real, grounding. I also finally signed up for a short design course I'd been putting off for almost a year. It was something I'd always wanted to try, but there was always some reason to delay it. Too busy, too tired, too distracted. Now those excuses felt thinner. Even my weekends began to feel different. Instead of waiting to see if Daniel or the group had plans, I started reaching out to other friends I hadn't seen in a while. People who didn't expect me to be emotionally available at all hours. People who didn't accidentally make me question my worth. It's strange how different life feels when you stop trying to earn someone's approval. I slept better. I ate better. And when I laughed, it actually felt natural instead of slightly forced. But somewhere in the back of my mind, a quiet voice kept reminding me of something. This probably wasn't over. Daniel didn't seem like the kind of person who would simply drift away once the dynamic changed. Some people walk away gracefully when they lose influence in someone's life. Others start making noise. It happened on a random Thursday night. I was lying on my couch, scrolling through Instagram, half asleep after a long day, when a notification popped up. "Daniel tagged you in a post." My first reaction was confusion. We hadn't taken a photo together in months. Curious, I tapped the notification and instantly froze. It was an old picture from a beach trip our friend group had taken the previous summer. In the photo, Daniel was sitting on a cooler while I stood beside him, handing him a drink. We were both laughing about something that had happened just outside the frame. But the strange part wasn't the picture itself. It was the crop. Daniel had edited the photo, so everyone else was cut out. The frame now showed only the two of us. Just Daniel and Emily. The caption read, "Some people show you what genuine care looks like. Thank you for everything, Emily. Grateful for the memories." For a moment, I just stared at the screen. My jaw slowly tightened. This wasn't nostalgia. This was strategy. The comments started appearing almost immediately. "Oh, wait, are you two back together? You guys were always cute together." Finally! I leaned back against the couch and let out a long breath. Daniel knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't just sharing a memory. He was pulling me back into his orbit publicly, where responding or ignoring it would both create a reaction. For a few minutes, I didn't do anything. Then I opened our chat. Me, "Hey, can you remove my tag from that post?" His reply came almost immediately. "Daniel, what? Why?" Me, "It's misleading. People think we're together." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Daniel, come on, Emily. It's just an old photo. Don't take it so seriously." I took a slow breath, forcing my fingers to stay calm on the keyboard. Me, "We're not together. I'd appreciate it if you respected that." This time he didn't reply. The message showed read, then nothing. 10 minutes later, I refreshed the post. The tag was gone. No apology. No explanation. Just quietly removed. I placed my phone down beside me and rubbed my temples. The strange thing was, I wasn't even angry. Mostly I just felt tired. Tired of the subtle games, the mixed signals, the innocent gestures that weren't innocent at all. That night, I opened his profile and muted his stories. Not blocked, not dramatic, just muted, out of sight. For the first time in months, it felt like closing a door that should have been shut a long time ago. The next few days passed quietly. Then one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from Matt. Dude, what happened between you and Daniel? I smiled faintly at the screen. I could practically hear the curiosity in his voice. Nothing happened, I typed back. A few seconds later, he replied, Then why does he seem so weird lately? I stared at that question for a moment before responding. I just stopped participating. Matt sent back a laughing emoji, but what I had said was completely true. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't reacting to Daniel anymore. I wasn't waiting for his messages. I wasn't trying to prove I mattered. I was just living my life. What I didn't realize then was that reclaiming my peace had quietly set something else in motion. Because when people realize they've lost control over someone they once took for granted, they tend to make their most desperate moves. And Daniel Brooks had always hated losing. A few months passed. By then, Daniel had become more of a background presence in my life than a central character. His name still appeared occasionally in group chats, and sometimes I saw him across the room during larger gatherings, but the gravitational pull that once existed between us had quietly disappeared. Muted notifications help with that. Out of sight slowly becomes out of mind. And honestly, life felt good. Not perfect, not magically transformed, but steady in a way that felt healthy. Work had been going well. The design course I signed up for had turned out to be surprisingly fun, and I found myself enjoying the creative side of it far more than I expected. Even my weekends felt fuller now, not because they were packed with plans, but because they belonged to me again. That's how I met Leo. It happened through a small marketing project at work. Our company had partnered with another team for a short campaign, and Leo was the graphic designer assigned to collaborate with us. The first thing I noticed about him was how relaxed he seemed. Not careless, just comfortable in his own skin. While most people in project meetings try to sound impressive, Leo spoke plainly. Clear ideas, direct feedback, no weird office politics hidden between sentences. The second thing I noticed was how easy it was to talk to him. During one lunch break, we ended up sitting together in the building cafe. What started as a quick 15-minute conversation somehow stretched into nearly an hour. We talked about ridiculous client requests, bad coffee, music, childhood road trips. Nothing dramatic, just normal conversation. And it felt simple. That simplicity was new for me. There were no games, no reading between the lines, no wondering whether I had said too much or not enough. When the project ended a few weeks later, Leo texted me, Hey, want to grab coffee sometime without spreadsheets involved? I smiled when I read that. Yeah, I replied, I'd like that. Our first real hangout was at a small cafe with a rooftop patio overlooking the city. It wasn't fancy. Plastic chairs, string lights, a slightly crooked view of the skyline, but we stayed there for hours. Leo told stories about growing up in a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. I told him about my disastrous attempt to learn guitar in college. We laughed about things that probably weren't even that funny. But there was something calm about the entire evening. No pressure, no emotional puzzle to solve. With Leo, I didn't feel like I had to prove my value. He didn't expect elaborate gestures or constant reassurance. He didn't need me to anticipate his moods or decode hidden messages. He just showed up and expected the same from me. That was the moment I understood something important. Love, or whatever healthy version of connection grows into love, isn't supposed to feel like a test. It's not supposed to leave you constantly wondering if you're doing enough. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could just be myself. No performance, no emotional calculations. Just me. So one evening, after a few weeks of seeing each other casually, I posted a photo. Nothing dramatic. Just a simple picture of the two of us sitting on that same rooftop cafe, the sunset painting the sky behind us. We were both smiling. The caption read, Good company, good view. That was it. No explanation. No announcement. Just a moment. I didn't think much about it afterward, until my phone buzzed later that night. It was Matt again. Emily? I stared at the message. Yeah? You know Daniel saw your post, right? I raised an eyebrow. Okay. Matt took a few seconds before replying. Just saying. I set the phone down and shrugged. It didn't really matter. Daniel and I hadn't spoken in weeks. Our lives had moved in different directions. Or at least that's what I thought. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello? There was a pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in months. Emily? My stomach tightened slightly. Daniel. I sat up on the couch, suddenly awake. Yeah, I said slowly. Daniel? His voice sounded different. Unsteady. I saw your picture. I leaned back against the couch. Okay. Another pause stretched between us. You're dating someone now, he said quietly. I exhaled slowly. Yeah, I am. The silence that followed felt heavier. When Daniel spoke again, his voice was softer. He looks nice. I didn't respond. A few seconds passed. Then I heard something unexpected. His breathing wasn't steady. It sounded like he had been crying. Emily, he said. My chest tightened slightly. Yeah? I messed up. I closed my eyes briefly. Daniel. No, listen, he interrupted quickly. His words started coming out faster. I really messed up. I didn't realize what I had until you stopped. Until everything changed. I remained quiet. You were always there, he continued, his voice cracking slightly. You were the one person I could always count on. Another pause. Then the words I think I had once imagined hearing. I miss you. He took a shaky breath. Can we just talk? Maybe try again? For a moment, the apartment around me felt very still. The city outside hummed quietly beyond the balcony doors. And Daniel's voice, once so familiar, now sounded strangely distant. For a few seconds after Daniel said those words, I didn't respond. The apartment was silent, except for the faint hum of traffic somewhere far below the balcony. The kind of quiet that makes every word feel heavier than usual. I miss you. Months earlier, that sentence would have shaken me. It probably would have been enough to pull me back into the orbit I had spent so long trying to escape. But something inside me had changed. Not hardened, just settled. I leaned back slightly against the couch and let out a slow breath. Daniel, I said calmly, I appreciate you telling me that. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. But I don't think you actually miss me. The silence that followed was immediate. Then I heard his voice again, softer this time. What do you mean? I rubbed my forehead lightly with my free hand, choosing my words carefully. I think you miss the attention, I said gently. You miss how I made you feel. Daniel didn't answer, but I could hear his uneven breathing through the phone. You miss knowing there was someone who always showed up, I continued quietly. Someone who listened to you at midnight. Someone who made you feel important. Another pause. Then finally he spoke. That's not fair, he said weakly. Isn't it? I replied. I wasn't angry. If anything, I sounded calmer than I had expected. When you told me we should just stay friends, I said. I accepted that. I respected what you wanted. Daniel's breathing steadied slightly as he listened. But after that, you didn't like it when I actually treated you like a friend. The words hung between us. You posted that photo, I added quietly. You tagged me, knowing people would think something was happening between us. That wasn't, It was, I said gently, cutting him off before his explanation could gather momentum, and I'm not even mad about it anymore. I paused. I just see it clearly now. Daniel exhaled slowly. Emily, I was confused. Maybe, I said. But confusion doesn't mean you get to keep someone waiting forever. Another long silence stretched across the phone line. Then Daniel spoke again, his voice quieter than before. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. Those words sounded honest, but they also sounded familiar, like a line that belonged to a story I had already finished reading. That happens to a lot of people, I said softly. He didn't argue. After a moment, he asked the question I think he had been avoiding since the call started. So that's it? I looked toward the balcony doors, where the city lights shimmered faintly through the glass. Yeah, I said. A shaky breath came through the phone. You don't feel anything anymore? I smiled faintly at the ceiling. I do feel something. That seemed to catch his attention. What? I care about you, I said honestly. Another pause. But not the way you want me to. I could almost hear the moment those words settled in. Daniel's voice, when it returned, sounded fragile. I really thought maybe there was still something there. There was, I said. Just not anymore. The truth is, I didn't hate Daniel, and that surprised me. For a long time, I had assumed closure would come with anger, that the only way to move forward would be to resent him for everything that had happened. But sitting there in the quiet of my apartment, holding the phone to my ear, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. Emily, Daniel said quietly. Yeah? I'm sorry. The apology was simple. No excuses. No complicated explanation. Just 2 words. And strangely enough, that was enough. I know, I said. Another long silence followed. This one felt different. Less tense. More like the final moment before a door closes. I hope you find what you're looking for, Daniel said. I think I already have, I replied. He didn't ask what I meant. Maybe he already knew. Take care, Emily. You too, Daniel. For a moment, neither of us moved to hang up. Then I said softly, Good night. Good night. The call ended. I placed the phone face down on the coffee table and sat there for a while without moving. The apartment felt larger somehow. Quieter. Not empty. Just peaceful. And for the first time since everything had started, I realized something. The ending of this story hadn't happened when Daniel sent that text months ago. It hadn't happened when I stopped messaging him. It hadn't even happened when he tagged me in that photo. The real ending had happened just now, when I chose not to go back. After the call ended, I didn't move right away. The phone lay face down on the coffee table, the screen slowly dimming until the room returned to its soft evening light. Outside, the city was alive in the quiet way cities always are at night. Distant traffic, faint voices drifting up from the street, the low glow of apartment windows stacked one above another. I sat there for a while, letting the silence settle. Months ago, I would have replayed every word of that conversation in my head, analyzing tone, searching for hidden meaning, wondering if I had said the right thing. But this time my mind was calm, not numb, just clear. Eventually, I stood up and walked toward the balcony. The cool night air brushed gently against my face as I slid the door open. The city lights stretched out below like scattered constellations. For a long time, I had believed closure would feel dramatic, like some powerful emotional breakthrough. Tears, anger, relief, all crashing together in one overwhelming moment. But standing there under the quiet glow of the skyline, closure felt something else entirely. Simple, peaceful. Behind me, my phone buzzed softly on the table. For a second, I thought it might be Daniel calling again. But when I walked back inside and flipped the phone over, I saw Leo's name on the screen. "Hey," his message read. "Did you survive your late-night work session?" I smiled. "Barely," I typed back. "Coffee tomorrow?" His reply came almost immediately. "Obviously." A few seconds later, another message appeared. "Everything okay tonight?" I paused for a moment before answering. "Yeah," I wrote. And for the first time in a long while, that answer felt completely true. The strange thing about moving on is that it doesn't always feel like a victory. There's no triumphant music, no sense that you've defeated someone. It's quieter than that. It's the moment when someone who once occupied so much space in your mind suddenly doesn't, when their voice no longer echoes in your decisions, when their absence no longer feels like something missing. I stepped back onto the balcony again, resting my arms lightly on the railing. The air was cool and steady, carrying the distant rhythm of the city. For months, I had believed that the most important moment in this story was the message Daniel sent that rainy night. "I really like you, but I think we should just stay friends." Back then, I thought that sentence had broken something. But now I understood the truth. That message hadn't broken anything. It had revealed something. It showed me a dynamic I had been too hopeful to see clearly. It forced me to step back from a role I had quietly trapped myself in. And when I stepped away, everything changed. I stopped chasing approval. I stopped building emotional safety nets for someone who never asked for them. I stopped waiting. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I started living my life again. The irony was almost funny. For months, I thought my reply, "Thank you for being honest," had been something I said for Daniel. But standing there under the night sky, I realized it had really been for me. Because honesty isn't just about telling someone how you feel. Sometimes honesty is admitting to yourself that something isn't right anymore, that the version of the story you've been holding on to doesn't actually exist, and that walking away from it doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do. I took one last look at the skyline before heading back inside. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Leo. "Also," he wrote, "don't forget you promised to show me that weird late-night taco place tomorrow." I laughed softly. "Deal," I replied. Then I placed the phone back on the table and turned off the living room light. Outside, the city continued glowing quietly in the distance. And for the first time in a long time, my story felt like it was finally moving forward.